flood board meeting is called to order. You want to call the roll, RJ or Chris?
Yeah. Vice Chair Bennett.
Yep, here.
Board Member Blomgren.
Here.
Board Member Bell. I see him here. We'll come back. Board Member Garcia.
Yes, I'm here.
Board Member Carolon.
Present.
And looks like Board Member Schnarr. And Chair Bundy.
Here. Okay.
RJ, sorry, I was on mute. Board Member Bell here.
Okay, excellent. Thank you.
All right. And so open time. This is if we have anyone in attendance on Zoom and wants to bring up a topic that's not on the agenda, this is the time to do that. Do we have anybody participating from outside of the board?
It doesn't look like we have any attendees, and there was no public comments on the email.
Okay, very good. So let's go to the agenda, and Chris.
Okay, let me open this up. So we will, do we need to do the approval of meeting minutes?
Oh, approval of meeting minutes, yes. Thank you.
Sure.
The motion to approve or?
I motion to approve.
Okay, second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Before you move, just one correction was a commenter who was on the meeting in February was Roger Sullivan, and his name was misspelled. It's Sullivan.
Thank you.
Yep.
Got it. I'll make that correction.
And coming back, I see we have another commissioner here, so or board member, Brian Schnarr, thank you. So we'll add to the record.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Okay, good to have you.
Okay, moving on to the discussion items. I'm going to open up the presentation. Okay, so pass it off to RJ for the CRS.
Yeah, so one of the first items we want to provide an update on is, probably over the last 9 months or so, one of our staff members, Jared Barrio, has been working with a consulting firm to update our community rating system. This is the CRS program that assists with getting discounts on FEMA taxes for those in the floodplain. And so happy to announce that Corte Madera has reached a class 6, which along with the County of Marin is the highest, or in this case, the best rating, but the lowest rating in all of Marin amongst the various agencies. And so it will provide an additional 5% reduction in each of those property owners' tax rates, which is, we think, a great benefit to our community. And so I want to provide a little update there and then just some quick highlights on how we achieved that rating. Go ahead, next slide, please, Chris. So if you're familiar, the CRS program has a whole book of ways to achieve credits or points. And to reach additional classes, you have to kind of collect those points and run them through FEMA, and they kind of verify, ensure that, yes, you did, in fact, achieve what they intended you to do, and they do a rating system. And so, one of the prior senior engineers, Kelly Crow, had done a real nice job in getting us not just to a class 7, but, in a lot of ways halfway to a class 6. So this recent effort, although it's still, a great milestone and an achievement to get to 6. We want to credit him for kind of getting us halfway there. So instead of needing, say 500 points to go to a next step, we really only needed about 240. And so we were able to achieve that through what they call Activity 510. And so really this was as part of a multi-jurisdictional effort amongst the other cities and unincorporated County of Marin. You may be aware there was a local hazard mitigation plan effort, and this was a multi-year effort involving all agencies to kind of look at vulnerabilities and kind of look at some of these mitigation measures to kind of better prepare our communities. And so this lives in this document here. I have it hyperlinked, but if you just were to Google Marin County Local Hazard Mitigation Plan, the hyperlink's not popping up. You would be linked to their webpage. It has a introductory summary, and also it's about a 300-page document. Kind of wanted to make is sometimes we can go out and achieve 10 or 20 or 50 points here and there by certain mailers and public notifications, but to get real sizable points, it does take these larger efforts. So in some ways, this was kind of opportunistic to be able to use this plan to our benefit. And so that was got 146 points for that particular plan that was done. Next slide, please. So the other one, again, a little bit opportunistic. Our fire departments are really kind of the leaders in notifying our community and having a system that notifies folks when there are these kind of impending emergencies and flood events. And so that's something that's already been in place. And what we really had to do was just establish some documentation, submit that for review and approval, and kind of show that is in place as a formality. And again, that was a way to get about 219 points. So that did tip us over the scale and got us to our class 6. And so that was kind of, those two are the main areas that we were able to focus on to get to that level. And so with that, I'll answer questions. Next slide, Chris.
Really great work to get that. I know how hard it is to do that, watching the engineers over the years try to get these points to get the best score possible. So great work.
I agree with Chairman Bundy. You have mentioned a couple of times the word opportunistic, and it seems almost like a pejorative term. In this case, I think that the opportunity was there, but it doesn't get realized if you don't actively look for those opportunities. So good job on getting this. It's been for several years that through your ongoing efforts, we've been trying to get this rating adjusted, and the fact that you did it says a lot about you. What I wonder if there's any way for you to post this so that the community is aware of this benefit.
Yeah, I believe at least it's been in the newsletter a couple times in the recent month or so, but we'll run it regularly just to kind of get the word out there so people see it, start to understand it. And the other thing is we'll be coming up on kind of our 5-year cycle where they do an audit. So most years it's a little more progress reporting and not as much of a deep dive. But coming this fall, it will be that kind of larger deep dive. And I think that'll be a good opportunity, not just to kind of look back at all the things that we've done and have to continue to do to maintain our score, but that'll be an opportunity to kind of see where we stand on a more detailed level about potential and continuing to move this forward if we can, within reason.
In RJ, this is Brian Schnarr. Just again, kudos to you guys. Appreciate it. If I'm to brag about your accomplishment to our neighbors out here in Mariner Cove, who are all in a floodplain, do they need to know how to be able to get this benefit, or is it something that the county applies?
I believe it's automatic, and I will confirm that. And if for some reason it's not automatic, I will let you know, and we will do some sort of outreach to make sure they find the proper location to apply for it.
Great. Thank you very much.
Okay. Looks like no other questions, so we'll move on to the next item.
Sorry, RJ, real quick, David
yeah.
Bell, maybe propose to Todd, it could be, or DLI part of the next Chronicles newsletter from the town.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So the next part of our presentation is we'll be giving some updates on storm repair projects. Some of these were recently completed and others are planned for this year. So the first item is the 210 Morningside drainage repair. So the town completed this project in November of last year, and the purpose was to repair the storm drain system adjacent to 210 Morningside Drive. We discovered the existing culvert under the road was corroded metal pipe and had several large voids underneath it. And the storm system would regularly overtop and pour down the driveway of 210 and across the road. And yeah, the pipe inlet at the top of the driveway is also too small, so that was part of the problem. So here are some pictures of before. On the top left, you can see the pipe is totally rusted with holes in the side. Bottom left is the outlet of the pipe, which was completely eroded or corroded and causing a bunch of erosion on the hillside. The two right pictures are other views of the outlet, and you can see there's a large void forming that was moving towards the road. The middle picture is the inlet above the driveway that we also improved. So here are the after pictures. On the top left, you can see we built a trash rack at the storm inlet and created a throat so that if any debris that gets through here can go down the pipe and won't clog it up.
Yeah, so the prior design on that, it didn't have that kind of slot or throat in the back. So even leaves, if there were enough of them, could kind of cover the grade enough to block the flow. And so this, we call it a trash rack, but it's also intended for debris as well. But it can collect, those larger pieces of debris, sticks and what have you, and prevent them from getting to the point of the drain inlet where it starts clogging it. So it just improves the efficiency of that inlet quite substantially.
Yeah, exactly. And then the next was we cleaned, grouted, and lined the 18-inch culvert with thermoform PVC liner. And you can see in the bottom middle picture that the metal pipe is has a white liner in it. And the bottom right picture is kind of a diagram of how it works. They basically slide deflated plastic pipe in, and then they pump steam pressurized through it, and it forms to the inside of the pipe. So that helps deal with all the holes and rust inside the pipe. So it should be good for many more years to come. And then on the top middle, you can see we enlarged the catch basin and the driveway, which actually was in public right of way, which just the way the property line went. And then bottom middle, we improved the outfall with riprap to prevent future erosion. So we've checked in on that a few times this winter, and it's been successful so far. So that was a good project. Any questions on that?
The thermoform, that's the typical way to line these old culverts.
Yeah, it's used a lot for old pipes so you don't have to dig and replace the whole pipe.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's by itself, it's a standalone, what we call SDR 35 pipe, which would be a substantial standalone pipe, but probably on the slightly thinner end. But when encased in an old metal pipe, it does a really nice job, and it's really good, especially when you have deep pipes or pipes that are, hard to get to. And so it's one strategy that we often use.
Yeah, it saved us a lot of money in this case because that pipe was pretty deep under the road.
Yeah, no, I didn't know about that. That's educational for me.
David here, is that on private property? Who's going to be responsible for maintenance, cleaning out that trap over the years?
Yeah, so there are two segments to be distinguished. There's the portion that's in the roadway. So Chris, you can go back
Sure.
to the photos. So this top middle photo is a drain inlet that really establishes the difference between the private and public side of the pipe segment. So downhill of that leads into the roadway. That's the publicly maintained storm drain system. From this inlet up, it's under the driveway. That's a private pipeline. This trash rack and kind of inlet, it sits on private property. There are kind of some, without getting too involved in some kind of, we had some kind of legal involvement in this, but we did enter into a cost share agreement and a maintenance agreement to where we contributed some to the improvement to have the property owner handle the maintenance and debris moving forward.
Okay, thanks.
Mm-hmm. All right. No more questions. We'll move on to the next one. Move this around. So we brought this up in previous meetings, but we're working on the El Camino Drive storm drain. There's a culvert that's having issues. I think it has some corrosion in between 38 and 42 El Camino. And we're currently looking at options to replace it, but not put it back in the same place because I don't believe we have a easement to have it there in the first place. So if you look at the exhibit on the right, there's a few different colors. The yellow lines are existing pipes. This is the one we're trying to replace. And then, so, red is option 1 or option 3. I can't even see, but red, green, and blue are the 3 options we're looking into, basically just piping the water somewhere else. And at the same time, this will be next year's, we're doing this sewer project here this year. And so we're going to try to incorporate it as part of that. But if the work involves environmental permitting, then we might postpone it till the following year when we're doing the road rehab project. So we're still figuring that part out, but hopefully we'll be able to solve that soon.
Yeah, so this is a project that's been on the CIP list for at least 3 years. I'm sure some of you may have a longer history on it. It's an area that has kind of, been prone to at least ponding, if not flooding, localized. And so this is a good opportunity to pick it up as part of these projects so that, once we're done with sewer, once we're done with the road paving, then we're, essentially bringing it, up to a complete project and hopefully no other issues for a decade plus. This doesn't also mean that we won't, this is the only area that we're looking at for some sort of drainage improvement. We are also looking at the rest of the neighborhood as we do these projects to, improve slopes and curb gutters and inlets to kind of pick up the worst of the worst. We're not always going to get every single bird bath, but we're going to try to get the ones, especially when they start leaving the gutter pan and overtopping the sidewalk and that sort of thing.
Yeah, exactly. I went around the last storm and logged where the biggest one, the ponding is. So hopefully we'll be able to take care of that in 2022. Any questions?
Yeah, I have a question on that. I had looked at that area in the past. I think David Bell and I both have been over there and looked at that area in the past. And I thought that the problem was along one of the subterranean drains in front of the Dunn property, but that past that, everything seemed to drain. So I wasn't aware that there was a problem with the culvert that was draining over to the swale. I thought it was really along the, I guess, the west side of El Camino in front of the Dunn property, where it looked like some storm drains were not functioning or had been, damaged or collapsed.
I did notice a lot of ponding right here on the west side of El Camino. So there may be opportunities to extend the pipe over, but it is possible that one of the problems is these storm drains on the west side are draining to that line that goes to the swale, and it's not fully functioning right now because it's pretty corroded.
And Chris, I thought it was also not sloped enough to that swale.
Yeah, that's probably also contributing.
So there, the pipe's been there in existence for some time. There might be an argument for some sort of, prescriptive easement, but we don't have a formal easement. The other thing is on the swale side, there is or are some environmentally sensitive areas, and we haven't done a detailed effort on this, but we did talk to one of the local environmental consultants, and they did raise some concerns should we want to pursue that. So that's kind of where we're looking to explore other options, because that can get not just pricey quickly, but it can really slow down the project. So we think, based on what we know today, the option one is likely going to be our first choice if we can make all the grading work. That's just a shorter run to the corner there. And we're hoping that we don't have utility conflicts, and, at least not have utility conflicts that we can't, deal with without too much effort. So that's kind of our inside track on what we're hoping will be the solution.
Based on what you're telling me, I'm suspicious that there are two problems in this area. One, the area of ponding that Chris talked about, I've observed in the past also, and talked to, I think it's Keith Dunn, that has dealt with that for a long period of time. And it had appeared to me that the reason for that ponding was blockage of the drain that continued south to get to this inadequate drainage culvert. So I would want you to talk to Keith, and to also look at the area in front of his house. But if you go, I guess, with that option 2 in the red, that would probably take care of it.
Yeah, we'll, probably 8 months to a year out, we'll send letters to everyone in the neighborhood and just, say if you have drainage issues, please contact us. So hopefully we'll get in touch with them and figure out what's going on.
Yeah, I think probably even sooner than that, and we're happy to get in touch with Mr. Dunn in the coming months, especially if he's available to kind of give his, personal knowledge on the situation.
Yeah, I think that'd be very helpful. I'd talked to him a couple of times about that, and seen the ponding that really goes up to his garage door. So I think that'd be great to make sure you're connecting with him, so that we may end up improving the drainage away at the southern end of the street, but still leave him with the acceptable ponding situation. So involving him in it should help get this to resolution.
Sounds good.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions before we move on?
I just had one question just to clarify. The option 4 there, that follows the existing non-functioning drain line between those two properties. Is that correct? And per RJ, what you said, that may cause some environmental concerns. Is that correctly understood?
So it's still an option, but it would involve, modifying the profile of the pipe. So there is a pipe there now. It's degraded, and then from what I was told from our field staff, it also flows the wrong direction. So we couldn't use that liner, for instance, we used at Morningside, because then you'd just be fixing one of the two issues. So we would actually involve open cut, open trenching, so a lot more disruptive to any sort of landscaping or other private improvements, in order to get the positive slope you need for it to fall all the way to the ditch. And then once you get to the ditch, that's where there could be some sensitive, biological habitat and whatnot.
Got it. And then option 1, which is further down the photo, avoid some of that sensitivity. It sounds like.
Yeah, it would kind of keep it within the roadway, and so we wouldn't have those environmental challenges. Just really your kind of grading challenges and utility conflicts.
Okay, got it. Thanks, man.
Yeah, because this pipe in yellow is already here, so we only have to connect to the end of it if the grades work out.
Got it.
Okay, so moving on. So the next project is the 2021 Road Rehabilitation Project. And we're including a bunch of drainage improvements in this project as well. So the roads included in this one are Harbor Drive, Echo Ave, Yolo Street, basically all of Marina Village, Flying Cloud Course, Pacific Queen Passage, and then we're doing a section of Paradise Drive from San Clemente to Seawolf, and Madera del Presidio. So on all of these streets, we've went out in the storms and figured out where there's ponding, and we're trying to fix as many of them as possible. And so we will be including, new curb and gutter to fix the grades, new catch basins and culverts, and hopefully we'll deal with a lot of the drainage issues. And our goal is to start the project in July. So we're working on the design right now. And
the next page is just kind of an example of something I'm sure you've all seen on various in town, but this would be an example of, some of these deficiencies that we're going to fix. I believe these are, it's one of the two. This is either Flying Cloud or Pacific Queen. I forget which one. So both of those two streets will get substantial drainage improvements, kind of the whole end to end. So should be a big boost to those, roadways, and then also, more localized areas of Marina Village as well.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so we're doing significant work on Flying Cloud and Pacific Queen. We'll probably be replacing a lot of the curb and gutter along the whole stretch and adding catch basins where we can.
Well, there's no drainage on Pacific Queen or Flying Cloud. So there's no underlying drainage system. These were designed to drain to each end of the street.
Right. So, yeah, and we can kind of show some of this in our design. So, yeah, we noticed that as well, because that would have made life a lot easier. What we tend to often do in these cases is you come in with a storm drain system from either side, not the whole way, but possibly a quarter of the way. And then from there, you then manipulate the road grades to kind of create high and low points. We call that sawtoothing. And so those two strategies are kind of really what we're focusing on to, get the water to drain either in the curb gutter to a catch basin or subsurface in those pipes in the storm drain network.
So this would involve putting a catch basin at each end, maybe a quarter of the way into the street. So the center part, the half of the street that doesn't have that, would slope in each direction to allow drainage.
Yeah, for the most part, if I heard you correctly, yeah, we would run a pipe underground, something like a quarter of the way in. We'd put catch basins on both sides, and maybe even several sets of catch basins. And we would go as far in as we needed to get, say the water that's in the very center of the road to flow downhill to one of those catch basins. But we wouldn't necessarily run the pipeline system all the way through just for the sake of running it all the way through. Because we also still need those pipes to flow downhill, and oftentimes the catch basin that we're tying into on the ends of the street might only be 4 feet deep on its own. So, but yeah, those are kind of the two big tools is the underlying pipe network and the surface flows of the curb and gutters, and kind of finding the best approach using those two tools.
And RJ, are you going to repave as part of that?
So yeah, all of these streets just listed will get full repaving.
Yeah.
And what we've kind of modified the paving strategy, because if you went and looked at some of the streets, some are in a lot better condition than others, and so we play with, we call it the section, so the ones that are a lot worse are going to get a thicker section. They may even get some some pavement fabrics that really help with weight distribution, and then the ones that are better shape but make sense to do because they're just about to fall off the deterioration curve, we'll just come in with a thin asphalt overlay.
Yeah, we were having a lot of problem with the asphalt getting chewed up by the water, but if the water is gone, it'll keep our asphalt around a little longer.
Yeah, absolutely. And then if and just kind of go about a little bit of a philosophy, we're because we're also in charge of the sanitary district, we really try to, when we come through these streets, we do that complete streets approach. So we start with utilities, including our sewer. We fix those, then we kind of work up. We start doing, surface improvements, with the drainage and whatnot, and then also paving, and then also look at any sort of enhancements we can do for, bike and peds. So the goal again is, when we walk away, that we've addressed, everything we could, and beyond that, we're gone for 10 plus years, other than just kind of preventative maintenance.
RJ, what would be the difference in cost in doing slot drains a quarter of the way in from each end as opposed to, putting down culverts and catch basins?
Yeah, I looked at this at one point, and I think most recently, and there's a cost escalation factor, but shoot, what was it? I remember it being about $20,000 per home to put in slot drain. I think it was on the order of magnitude of about $400 a foot or $200 a foot, whatever that comes out to be. I think based on a 50-foot property, it was like $20,000. Yeah, so that's like $400 a foot. Whereas curb gutter, it can fluctuate on how someone bids, but usually you're looking about $50 a foot. A catch basin by itself is $3,000 to $5,000, and a pipe is, $200 to $300 a foot. So I personally think that conventional is the more appropriate way to go. There is a maintenance effort with the slotted drains as well. It's also, we kind of have been dealing with it a lot where private homeowners want to make an improvement and none of the contractors know how to deal with the slot drains. So it kind of bites you there too. They don't have the materials to match up, and then it's been a struggle. So yeah, I I tend to prefer the conventional methods myself, based on costs and maintenance and those other factors.
And RJ, just putting costs aside, how are they comparable in performance?
Yeah, like I said, that one of the issues with the slotted drain is they're very prone to getting clogged with leaves and whatnot. So there's also kind of a liability element. All of that slot, just so it's constant sweeping. Luckily, we have a town sweeper, so at this point in time, we're able to kind of keep up with it. But that all channels and funnels into like a small 4-inch pipe. So it doesn't take much for that pipe to get clogged. And so if you're not there to maintain it consistently, then you have this liability factor. And whereas a conventional system, you've got a large catch basin with a large throat opening leading into usually a 12 or 15-inch diameter pipe that can handle debris. So cost aside, I still would take the conventional options.
RJ, David here, even in the conventional system, where's the water going? Where's it draining to?
So yeah, they all will eventually drain to a proper linear system in the roadway, underground, a larger pipe, often 15, 18, 24 inches diameter. So large diameter pipe. If you're in Marina Village, that's going to go to the detention basin. Whereas if you're in Mariner Cove, it's going to exit and discharge most likely into the bay or San Clemente Creek.
I believe this particular one would discharge into the headwaters of the San Clemente Creek at the west end of Spindrift.
Yeah, that sounds right. Are there any other questions on this?
Just, I'm super glad you identified the Marina Village annexation of Mariner Cove, Yolo, and Baja, because I have seen that over the last winter. There's lots of standing water, so kudos for identifying that.
Oh, I did have one thought on channel. I know that there is a big problem with ponding of water at the on the west side of channel at the very end of it, and hopefully this work will resolve that question or resolve that concern with that ponding at that point. But I'm hoping that you're aware of that ponding that at the end of channel that needs to be addressed.
Yeah, I did note that one when I was driving around, and we're planning to install a new catch basin there.
Perfect.
So, yeah.
Yeah, we noted Marina Village alone, 10 or so locations that need drainage improvements.
Okay, so moving on to I believe this is the last item. So this is just other recent, maintenance repair work we've done on the storm system. And this list comes from our maintenance crew. So I'll just go down the list. So 167 Golden Hind Passage, this was the requested check valve from the flood board. That's now installed and functioning. Marina Village and Lagoon 1 pumps, they've installed new transfer switches for the generator. The San Clemente Creek floodgate, that floodgate actually wasn't functioning for a while, and so now they've installed a new actuator and have ordered additional parts, so it's now working. And then the High Canal pump station, pump number 1 has been repaired and reinstalled. We had Tesco inspect all the storm pump stations in January. 101 Casa Buena Drive, they repaired a catch basin there. And then on Monona and Madera, they abandoned a non-functional storm drain. Lagoon 1 pump station, they're pending some repairs there on one of the pumps. And then last is the spring gate maintenance is started in April. So once again, looking at all the floodgates and check valves around town. So our maintenance team has been pretty busy keeping up with all the maintenance, and everything seems to be working well.
Yeah, I got a couple to add. So there's a Caltrans drainage ditch near the movie theater, and we've been working with them and coordinating with them to have their ditch line or have their ditch cleared, and then that ties into our town maintained storm drain system, which we're having flushed. So if you've driven on Tamil Vista this winter season after a rain, you might have noticed a pond kind of in that vicinity right near the shopping center there. So that's in the process of getting remedied. And then we, as part of our high canal pump station, we have some structural support columns that are corroded that we're in the process of replacing it right now. So plenty of little things, and often these little things don't get brought to these forums and others, but thought it was a chance to kind of just show some of the things that we're working on. Chris, did we gloss over the San Clemente project?
Oh, yes, we probably did. Well, before we go there, is there any questions on this?
I did have a question on the San Clemente Creek floodgate. Is that normally is just kept open and then would only be closed at a ultra high tide that could cause flooding south of Paradise?
Yeah, it's right across Nugget from the Nugget Market, and I think most of the time it's closed because the San Clemente pump station is actually connected to it via an open channel. So as long as the pump station's functioning, the floodgate doesn't usually need to be open.
Oh,
So, and that's, I believe, the case as well. There is a high point in between those channels. So what did occur was it was closed, like Chris mentioned. There is a time of the year where we do open it and allow water to drain out through that gate. And when this happened right around the time that we went into kind of COVID shutdowns, right around March. And so we weren't able to get a repair person out there for a while. And it wasn't a flood risk, but it did back up into that kind of private maintained marsh area behind there, Meadow Creek area. And the additional water just caused the vegetation just to flourish and blossom, way more than they would normally have to deal with. And so normally they have someone come in annually and do some vegetation clearing. And this time it was, 3 times the amount of vegetation they had to clear because of that additional water. So it does serve a purpose, but not a set purpose, but we did have that actuator replaced.
yeah, I guess I was thinking that in the past, mostly open to allow just flushing and tidal action to that Meadow Creek area, behind the Nugget Market and, going up Madera del Presidio.
Yeah, I'll have to check. My understanding is we close it during the winter and then open it probably spring and summer.
Oh, okay.
Do you have or what type of asset management system do you use to track all these maintenance activities and what comes next and what breaks very often and all that stuff?
A lot of that, we're lucky to have a few of our maintenance team members that have been here for 10 and 20 years. And so they have a pretty good understanding of the kind of maintenance cycles and the things that need to get checked. So they have their own kind of schedule that they follow. In addition to that, Chris mentioned we do have Tesco come out and do regular inspections multiple times a year. So they'll, you know, they'll flag where, you know, maybe there's a faulty connection point and that looks corroded, or you know, and they'll kind of go through all those, and then we go and repair them. And then we're looking to kind of once we roll into this storm drain master plan and you get a more detailed analysis there, we might expand some of the kind of regular inspection procedures. But since we'll be doing that as part of the storm drain master plan coming up, we're gonna do that first before we open that discussion.
Okay, yeah, no, I think it's worthwhile to keep that in mind. Some of these can be a monster, I mean, depending on the level of details that one wants to consider. But at the same time, one can always start relatively small and just have a list of the assets, and then start recording. Well, usually it's electromechanical equipment and you know, repairs and stuff like that. So it's because what you mentioned of individuals being senior and knowledgeable, it's very true. You know, I was lucky to work with individuals who were like that, and I benefited greatly, and I learned a lot from them. But unfortunately, they do tend to retire. It's good to have something that remains and that can be transferred, and that doesn't rely on the personal knowledge of individuals, which again, it's something very valuable. But you know, to working towards something that is more permanent, it's always a good idea. And again, with care, because that could be a full-time job in and of itself to start recording everything. But something to consider.
Yep. No, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, it's very true. I know we do actually have a software called Info Asset that we've been using to keep track of our sewer system. And it does have the capability to also keep track of the storm system, but we need a lot of work to get the GIS updated. So we're hoping we can, you know, do that in the storm drain master plan when we're able to get that going. So
yeah, I think we're definitely going to look at that that option. You know, whether we want to invest it, that add-on, I'm sure is going to be several $100,000. But if that's the if it's worth the investment, then you know, we may move forward. So we'll get into those conversations once we have some consultants to interview for that RFP.
mm-hmm.
Chris, let's go back to San Clemente. I think we somehow
Sure.
that one.
Let me see if is it. Oh, okay. So, oh, here we go. Okay, so this is the item we skipped over. So the San Clemente pump station outfall pipe repair. We mentioned in the last flood board meeting that we discovered a sinkhole over the outfall pipe from the San Clemente pump station, and we did an emergency repair using Gelati Bros. And you can see on the picture on the left, they excavated the pipe and found the hole, which was on the bottom of the pipe right underneath the flange. And so they did a temporary repair where they basically put a piece of steel underneath it and surrounded it in concrete, and then we backfilled this area, and that's been working so far, but it's certainly not a permanent repair. So we've identified, you know, several things we need to do on this outfall pipe, and so I'll just go down the list. So starting at the most important one is repair the corroded hole in the bottom of the steel pipe flange. That the hole is like, you can fit your whole hand inside it. So we're looking at options right now if we may have to just replace that section of pipe, which will be fairly expensive because it's 54-inch steel pipe. On the other side, going towards the pump station, the steel manifold used to have a liner in it, which is now gone. And so we need to replace that epoxy liner. And then on the exterior of the manifold,
Photos to give it just, oops, getting a little feedback. Maybe it's this construction worker who's bigger, but these are very large pipes, and then leaving the screen to the bottom right, it enters into a custom 3-way manifold that then connects to very large pumps. So if it was as easy as just kind of swapping those parts out, we would, but it's such a custom piece that we're looking at, various ways to line it and kind of extend the life that way.
Yeah, exactly. And every little piece adds a lot of costs. Like just this rubber coupling here, we were looked into replacing, and it's like $10,000. So, these repairs are going to add up pretty quickly. So we're hoping to prioritize, these repairs and put a project together either this year or next year. But yeah, continuing on the list. So the exterior of the manifold has started corroding. So we'll need to remove the seal and then, repaint it. And then cathodic protection. We had a consultant come and test the various sections of pipe, and the manifold was still good. I believe they replaced the cathodic protection in 2010. But the other pieces, we found that it looked like they used to have protection, but at some point it had been removed. So that puts those at risk of corroding, which is, what caused this in the first place. And then the last 2 items are to analyze if we want to install a liner in the reinforced concrete pipe that goes about 800 feet and outfalls into the San Clemente Creek. That would be an expensive process, but it would protect it, down the road. So we're going to look into how much that's going to cost. And then the last piece is another big issue. The pipe has been settling. Even over the past 4 years, we've noticed that it has a large sag in it now. And it's actually pulling this manifold down into the ground, and it's starting to crack the pump station building. So we're going to try and look into solutions to that as well. So lots of problems with this one, but we're hoping to get most of them repaired at the same time.
Chris, where does that hit San Clemente Creek?
It's actually right next to the floodgate we were talking about earlier,
Okay.
right across from Nugget. There's it dumps into like a drainage box that has a concrete wall, and when the pump station turns on, it fills up the pipe, and then it goes up and over the wall into San Clemente Creek.
Okay,
Yeah, right
RJ was speaking before about keeping that creek valve closed in the winter. So in the winter, San Clemente pump station pumps to the box you just described, and that's how the runoff gets to the bay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Correct.
So
When you said
RJ,
that the cathodic protection was removed, do you mean the sacrificial anodes, or what sort of cathodic protection was removed?
Well, according to the records, there was anodes buried somewhere nearby, and they found the wire, but they couldn't find the actual anodes themselves. So possibly there was an emergency repair in 2016, and it's possible that they just got disconnected at that time.
Okay.
so RJ, the manifold was, I think that was replaced 10 years ago or so. The manifold that the worker is standing on right now.
That sounds right.
Okay.
Yeah, there's been
we did find some photographs of that during the install. So yeah, and Chris probably has a good understanding of that timing. It sounds like you do too as well, Bob.
Yeah. So yeah, they did I think they replaced that piece in 2010. And then I think there's been 2 other incidents where the reinforced concrete pipe has started leaking and caused sinkholes under the roads. So had a lot of repairs.
One suspicion is the manifold is new and possibly protected, but it wasn't, and there might have been corrosion protection on it, but it wasn't correctly, we call it jumpered over to this small piece of pipe that is corroded now and failing. So that one was kind of left, unprotected, that small piece. And then that's where you're seeing the corrosion.
Is it possible that some of the problems are related to the amount of pressure that's required to move the water through? Because I noticed that the outfall with the grate on it, that has come loose several times, and I think some of it must be related to trash that goes through there, gets caught on that grate, and must put a lot of back pressure on the pumps and the manifold and the drainage.
Yeah, that definitely could contribute. And actually recently the liner from the manifold has been coming off in large chunks, and that's getting stuck on the grate and clogging it up. So our maintenance team has been removing those liner pieces as they come out. And then also, I mean, that the header wall is at 4 feet. So a lot of the high tides go above that and create more pressure that the pump has to pump against.
Yeah, so anytime you have that debris, you do have those kind of suspended saws that could mechanically wear away, whether it be the liner or the inside of the pipe. So that's very possible. I'm not sure to what extent, the pressure flow would, from a cathodic protection kind of chemical standpoint, where if that would accelerate or not, I'd have to look into that. But from a mechanical standpoint, I could see that.
I would wonder if a revised design for the grate would be better, where it was more like a small box that sat on the top of the outfall, so that it had 4 sides, and there would be a lot more surface area for the water to come out of.
It would definitely help during the discharging event when the pipes are running. And I'm wondering though, if the reason it is the way that it's designed is to not let that highly corrosive salt water in, at all times of the year. I could see that being a benefit. But either way, worth some thought and talking to some, folks that specialize in this area.
Well, that could be an opportunity to reinforce and raise the walls another foot, so that the tidewater, high tides wouldn't go back in it now. I think it probably does it at about, a tide of 5 or 5.5 feet. If that was raised up and then a different type of grate installed, that might preserve the life of it, because this is getting to be a very expensive pump station based on the repairs that have had to be done over the years.
Yep, it's our largest storm drain pump station. It's one of our newer ones. So yeah, I don't want to speculate too much, but it's unfortunate we've had to invest in it as much as we've had over the recent years. Any other questions on this one? Okay, so we'll move on to future agenda items.
So RJ, I was hoping, this isn't a business item for discussion, but I was hoping you could give us an update. It might color what we want to talk about in the future. Could you give us an update on what the process is moving forward for the climate action plan reviews and approvals and whatnot?
Yeah, I can just share a little information that's also publicly available. I just can't speak too much on other stuff, but and I assume you mean the climate adaptation plan. So we finished the public comment period. Was that a week or so ago, and so still reviewing those comments, analyzing them. We don't plan to go to council for possible adoption until May 4th at the earliest. We're still reviewing those comments, still kind of meeting with some of the community members over some of those issues. But any further items, we would, definitely discuss those leading up to a council meeting and have an opportunity to discuss them publicly with the community at the council as well.
Okay, thanks. I was looking online and noticed that the Climate Action Committee, which is the group of citizens who signed up to work on those documents, had February as their last publicly scheduled meeting. I'm not sure if they're planning on continuing to meet, but in many of the public meetings, you and Town Manager Cusimano have talked about how this is a living document. So I think there's going to be a lot of discussion about the climate adaptation plan even after Town Council adopts it. And I wanted to propose that this group, the Flood Control Board, could be sort of a brain trust around some technical issues that go into sea level rise planning in the future. I think it would be helpful if we had a bunch of people who are familiar with the technical and legal issues that we're providing input to the town and to RJ and to Town Council about like certain baselines to look at about high tides and low tides in models for sea level rise projections. So I would propose, if we could, on our next flood control meeting, discuss that topic of how this group can continue to support sea level rise discussions and kind of moderate between the town and the city, or the town and the population.
We'll pencil that in for our next meeting.
Thank you, Nathan. I would actually welcome the opportunity as well. I think that's a good recommendation.
Any other items that you all would like us to discuss at a next meeting or a future meeting?
I can raise one thing. It's probably, I might be late to the game on a couple of things, so I apologize if it has already been discussed, but I was recently made aware that a lot of the online real estate websites are now posting our flood risk for our housing in Mariner Cove. Some neighbors and I just talked about it, and we're actually sitting at what they call an extreme flood risk, which is now published alongside our house values. They suggest that within 5 years, we'll have a 95% chance of a flood risk or a flood event in the houses in Mariner Cove. So there are a lot of people that are just starting to see this as they watch real estate in Mariner Cove. And I think what's going on, from what I can tell, is the federal government's looking to update their risk profiles. And this has to do with the flood insurance on coastal states mainly. This is going to be a big topic because those flood insurance rates, I think, are going to go up significantly if the bill passes and FEMA increases those flood rates. So it's something that I'm starting to hear from my neighbors about, because they start to see the flood risks and the extreme flood rating on the houses. So I'm not sure if this has been discussed by the group, but at least being able to respond to concerned citizens with what that we're aware of these things. And we, part of what you had said, RJ, earlier about helping to reduce flood insurance rates, that's an important part of it. But if we could at least have that on our minds.
Okay, look into that. All right, anyone else? Anything else we want to add for our next meeting in June?
Just to follow up on that, I think that the climate adaptive plan, is really important going forward, and the flood board should be very involved in that, as as Nate also indicated. And having a plan for dealing with sea level rise should be the kind of thing that will prevent flooding and prevent, FEMA from putting us in a greater flood risk category. I think all of us that live in Mariner Cove and observe the tides over the years are concerned that sea level rise is going to be the future and that it's going to have to be dealt with. But from the standpoint of flooding over the next decade, You know, I don't see this as any greater risk than what we've experienced over the last 60 years that Mariner Cove has been here. But we do need to make plans going forward. It's unfortunate that FEMA seems to be interested in raising flood insurance rates, you know, so that they have money to spend when real flooding events happen, mostly someplace else. Anyway, that's my thought on sort of how FEMA operates. But this would be a good discussion for the June meeting because the climate adaptive plan will have been adopted at that point, and we can talk about how we can, you know, work with administration, engineering, and the residents of Corte Madera.
Okay. Great. Thank you, everyone.
Bob, RJ, one last thing, David here. It all relates to this great discussion going forward. I recall, it was mentioned before, your predecessor, Kelly, we had started on a project that he called the LIDAR study. And I think it would be a great tool to start implementing the CAP to find out where our vulnerability is. I mean, if the water is coming over a dike, where is it going to come? And I think that's what this LIDAR study. So if it's not too much effort, if that's in your files, to dust that off, bring it to our attention next time. And I think it was Brian, you know, thanks for bringing that up. I had not heard about that over here in Marina Village, but I'll look into that real estate aspect.
Great. All right. Well, Bob, if you care to do so, you may adjourn at when you choose to.
Okay. I think everybody's had their say. Any final comments from anybody? Otherwise, we'll let Chris and RJ and everybody go home. Or yeah, you're not at home.
All right. Take care, everyone. Thank you.
Thank
right.
you. Bye,
Thank you.
everyone.
Good night.